You're listening to Gateway to E-Commerce, a podcast by ClearSale. In this series, global e-commerce leaders discuss challenges, best practices, new tech, and secrets to success. And now your hosts, Sarah and Denise.
Hello and welcome. This is Denise and I'm here with Sarah today. Today we're going to talk about something that's really exciting to both of us. It's e-commerce strategies and how to choose the right e-commerce platform for your business. If you want to know about our team and who is recording these podcasts, you can go back to episode 1 if you haven't listened to that yet, where we go over a thorough introduction. But for this purpose, we want to jump right into it and talk about e-commerce platforms. It's something that is near and dear to me and something that I deal with pretty much every single day with our partnerships. But also, as we relate to merchants, it's something that comes up with questions on what platform do I choose and all these sorts of things. And while we might not have all the answers today, we're going to have a lot of thought-provoking things to think about and hopefully steer you in the right direction so that you can make some decisions about e-commerce platforms. Sarah, one of the things that I think is interesting to think about is the fact that so much has changed with e-commerce in the last few years. And thinking about the customer experience, what are some of the things that you've noticed that have changed?
Of course, we have all this increase in volume due to this coronavirus situation. But not only that, I think that companies, they're realizing that customer service is key for their brands. So they're investing more and more in personalization and putting the right products in front of the right people and integrating their e-commerce channels with their brick and mortar stores. So they are understanding more and more that people, they don't go to an online store and necessarily make the decision there, that they also go to for companies, they do have a brick and mortar store. I think that most of the things that are changing, they run around customer experience. Companies cannot compete in price. Only there are huge corporations like Amazon, Alibaba, others like that they will always basically lead on pricing. So companies have to differentiate on customers' experience.
That's so true. When you talk about that personalization piece, it's funny because it's almost near impossible these days to forget about something in a cart or something that you might have viewed or put into a cart prior, because it comes back to find you, whether it's on Facebook or whatever the case might be. If merchants are doing their job right. So that's definitely part of the whole e-commerce thing, and making sure that you've got those marketing tools to support it. And, thinking about that experience checking out too, making it as fast as possible. I came from the payment side of things, and, whether it's alternative payments, people paying buy now, pay later type thing, or breaking it up to mini payments, or offering a wallet. So all you have to do is log in and check out. All of these things come into play in making that a better customer experience as well.
Yeah, that's true. Everything nowadays have to be easy, and people are doing more and more mobile shopping, and we always have new social media. People are switching from different social media platforms. So now we have TikTok, and a few months ago it was all about Instagram. A few years ago, it was all about Twitter, and the advertisement and things that we have to do for each one of them is different as well. But at the same time, everything has to be integrated.
That's so true. And that's that visual aspect as well, right? With TikTok, it's video. And, being able to present your product in a more animated way is also an interesting aspect. Given that, I think that, one question that comes to our team on the partnership side quite often is, I'm not happy with my platform anymore, and I need to move on to a different platform. I think that there are many questions that pop up in our mind as we get this question. It's very similar to trying to choose someone to date. It's a very personalized approach, and it involves many, many factors. So what are some of the things that you think people should consider when, they're considering moving to a new platform or going online in general for the first time and selling online?
Yeah, I think that first of all, we have to understand there is no one size fits all. So that's what it's interesting about what we're going to talk today. We are going to help merchants to go over the questions that they should make in themselves and also to their platforms to make sure that the platform fits their needs. But we know that the needs are different. So there are companies, they sell like high value eating items only in the US. There are companies that they are based in Australia, selling to the US market. There are companies that are selling only in Mexico. So there are different aspects that you have to pay attention. So this varies from how much it will cost, the flexibility that you're going to have, how much you should know about technology in order to be able to not only to install the platform, but also to keep it up to date. So there are many, many factors that we are going to talk about today, but it's not one size fits all, which is also what makes it a little bit harder. But I think we have good tips to give people that you should be thinking about.
I agree. And I think one of the first things you have to think about is that technology piece that you hinted on, and how tech savvy is your team, or how large of a team do you have? There is the opportunity to outsource developers to build your website and to build the different apps or applications that might tie into the e-commerce platforms to do other functionality like marketing efforts or taxation on your product per correct locale, or payments, or all these sorts of things that you have to consider. So I think you have to think about that piece and think about how much you want to outsource, how much you want to invest as well, or how much you're able to invest. Because starting out, you could spend as little as $29 to get up and running with something like a Shopify account, a basic version. But you could also be in the business of enterprise level merchant who might be investing $100,000 a year to get up and running with a more enterprise, more sophisticated, more tailored and customized approach. So when you look at that span of things from $30 to $100,000 on up, it's obviously a lot in between that most people fit into, right? And I think that's the first piece, is how much do you want to plug and play, and how much do you want to customize, and how able are you to support that on the back end technologically?
Yeah, and here we have, there's a key question that comes together is how much do you plan to grow? Because you can choose easy path now and have everything plug and play and standard solution, but maybe 1 year from now you're going to be much bigger, and then you're going to have new needs, and you don't want to switch to a new platform. So you always have to build your store now thinking about the future, especially in e-commerce, which is an industry that easily grow 20% per year, depends on the country, can grow even more, depends on what you're selling, can grow even faster than that. So always have in the back of your mind that you are going to keep growing, and by how much it's really important, so you can make the decisions now that are going to give you flexibility in the future.
That's so true. I mean, there's a story that comes to mind, and it's the Kylie Jenner lip kits that she launched a couple years ago on Shopify. And, it's one of those things where nobody really knew how well it would take off. She had a lot of social following, and of course she's a star. So there were all those factors that to be considered, but going into that, they weren't sure if they were able to sell the product and how quickly. And now I believe it's an over $1 billion business that she's involved with, that was really born and raised overnight online. So it's pretty amazing how fast things can explode. And I think that's really important to be able to consider the whole aspect of that growth, because not everybody can think 5 years ahead. It's a lifetime when it comes to e-commerce. And you do have to put that into play a little bit, because one of the problems that occurs is people can outgrow their system. And so they've invested all this time and money, and then, it's non-existent and doesn't support what they need 2 years down the road, or 8 months down the road, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, the cool things that the platforms, they realize that. So we have like some platforms that they have enterprise versions. So we have Shopify and Shopify Plus. We have the new Magento. So I think one of the important aspects here that maybe if we can explore a little bit more, it's about the different kinds of platforms that we have, or versions that we have. So the self-hosting solutions and things like that. So what do you think it's important for people to think about on that angle?
Yeah, so generally what I share with merchants is that self-hosted means that it's very easy to plug and play. Everything is taken care of for you, hosting wise, meaning all your templates and everything else are out there, taken care of and provided for you in one place. You don't have to go to a hosting provider and pay additional hosting fees to make that happen, nor do you have to create those templates and things on your own. But with that comes less flexibility generally, right? So it can't be easy and be very customizable. Those are two different sides of the spectrum. So Generally, you're going to have templates that other people might have, or you might have the inability to add some of the functionality that you want, whether it's a cross-sell or an upsell, or maybe it's got, if you've got thousands and thousands of products, that sort of system isn't going to work as well for you. Then you might have to look at more of a customizable solution, which is generally hosted, which would be like a Salesforce Commerce Cloud or a Magento Enterprise. They have 2 different layers to their system, which is owned by Adobe now. So you get all that functionality as well that you have access to. And those sorts of things that you want to consider. So the hosted would be Shopify, BigCommerce, 3D Cart, those types of platforms.
And when you talk about growth, another thing that you have to think about is not only the growth in volume, like how much more you're going to sell, but also the mix of your products. Because what it's common, especially nowadays, the companies, they are launching like niche products. You might start selling a few items, a few SKUs, and then you want to grow really fast for new categories and new markets. So this is also another important aspect that you have to think about when choosing a platform. Like, how many SKUs can you have? How the platform is gonna charge you for that, if we are gonna have to pay extra fees to add new items or things like that. So it's another aspect that merchants have to think about.
That's so true. And even just the responsiveness of the platform. So if it's something that is out of your control for creating templates and things like that, is it something that's instantaneous, or do you have to wait on your platform or somebody from your platform to offer support and test and launch something for you? One horror story that comes to mind is a company that has, a lot of products. They have thousands and thousands of products, and they're switching them out constantly. So they've got very specialized pages, and they've got, it's a type of jewelry that's very, I guess it's like collected. And so people are always waiting for the latest releases and their limited releases. So all of these things come into mind when they're launching their site, because they have to have special promo pages that disappear at certain times and things like that, or maybe only allow certain VIP members in earlier. So all this functionality has to be built. So they had invested probably close to $100,000 into a platform, and we're working to launch by the holiday season last year. And it came up to 2 weeks before the holiday season was really about to start, and the platform wasn't able to get everything out the door and put up like they needed to. So essentially they had to revert back to their old system without a lot of the functionality that they were building in new, and really had to revamp things marketing wise and everything to support all the changes at the very last minute. So those are the types of horror stories that you don't want to become part of, and make sure that you avoid.
Yeah, that's terrible. Another thing that I was thinking about here is when you're choosing your platform, maybe you can start with everything that the platform offers, but as you grow, you might want to integrate other solutions for your platform. So let's say you might want to start with a payment gateway that offers everything in one package, or offers payments only to the US, but maybe in the future you want to sell internationally, maybe your tax is going to be more complex. So it's also important to look at the whole ecosystem that from your platform, which partners can integrate with your platform, what are the alternative solutions that you have, so you make sure that you don't get stuck with only features that the platform can offer, because again, there are needs that might be specific for you. You might be selling digital goods and your needs are going to be different versus someone selling physical goods. You might be marketing to senior people, then your store has to be the user-friendly aspect that you have to look at differently than if you're selling to teenagers. So there are many, many aspects that you have to think about. How much customization can you have? And I think this goes back to the partners that the platform have. So, and Denise knows that well because she's working the whole ecosystem of e-commerce. So we know that there are many, many solutions out there for different kind of needs and different kinds of merchants.
That's so true. And I mean, you can't just take it out of the box and say, okay, well, they've got payments built in, so that's going to work for me. Or they say we've got fraud screening built into the payment, so that's going to work for me. So something that comes to mind is along those lines are, somebody has an out of the box payments, they've got fraud filters built in. So a merchant thinks I don't have to worry about a thing. Well, a lot of times those are targeted to very specific verticals like apparel at a $70 price point. And if you've got something like jewelry, or you've got a CBD product that has its own different levels of risk and types of buying patterns and all those sorts of things, the payment company might not accept you because of the vertical that you're in, then you're out of luck there. And B, that built-in fraud screening isn't always the ideal because it's not catered to your type of product or vertical. So you have to dig a little bit deeper and figure out what you need to do. And we were talking earlier, and you had brought up forums as a great way to find that out. And I think that's so true. A lot of these systems have forums attached to them, and the merchants can go on and talk to other merchants or get feedback from vendors and ask questions specifically. You can also read reviews on the different apps and different types of add-ons that are available within these ecosystems to make sure that you're making the right decisions. And the good thing is there's usually more than one choice. These add-ons, for instance, you could build the base and get the add-ons to work with you in that moment for the types of functionality that's needed as you grow.
Yeah, that's true. And you mentioned CBD, which reminds me it's about something that it's interesting or important for high-risk merchants. And maybe you don't consider your store a high-risk merchant, but some platforms, they are going to put you under the high-risk category. And some of the things that they offer or promise, especially under the payments and fraud area, they might not be true for you. Or they might, for example, there are some platforms or gateways that they do offer chargeback guarantee, but if you are a high-risk merchant, they're not going to accept you for that. So it's always important to make sure that you qualify for all of the features that you are seeing being advertised. So some payment gateways and fraud solutions are only going to offer you some of these features after being with them for a few months, or they are never going to accept you at all if considering the countries that you sell into or the category that you're in. So that's why this aspect of forms is also important, because not everything is clear. And sometimes you have to find on the terms and conditions of the platforms or add-ons, or what you can take, what it can be applicable for you and what it's not.
I think from a pure marketing perspective too, this is always fascinating to think about, and you know a ton about this, Sarah, like the whole search engine optimization piece of it and being able to market. I think merchants oftentimes forget, especially if they're in a brick and mortar situation only, that once they enter e-commerce, it becomes a much larger playing field, and they could be selling all over the world if they allow sales there. And then they could find different marketing niches. I had a friend who opened up a business that was selling this dryer he invented it. It was to dry camelback bladders for, those drinking systems, so that they don't get moldy. And
which is useful.
It is very useful. And he found out, he was just selling it and trying to do things locally and things, went online and started finding out that Germany was a huge target audience for him, because German mindset is don't throw it away, don't buy something new when you can utilize and recycle and continue to use that same product. God bless him. So he found out that was a target audience that he had, and then he started building out functionality specific to that audience. So it's really interesting the paths that you can find along the way, and sometimes you don't even know you're going to go there. But search engine optimization is one thing too, and not every platform, especially 5, 6, 7 years ago, had that functionality built in. Merchants didn't understand the importance of that, but then as large marketplaces and things opened up, they had to get more competitive and find ways to drive traffic. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a endless word. You can talk about marketing for e-commerce for hours, but there are some simple aspects that people don't think about. So you can think about how important is the quality of the search bar on your store, because people have to find the product that you are selling, and not always they're gonna use the exact terms that you put as the name of the product. So there is intelligence there. We can talk about the multi-platform advertisements. So how can you know that that person that is on Instagram is the same one from Facebook and the same user on Gmail, so we can advertise on all the platforms at the same time? How can you leverage the search terms from people? So how can you do remarketing? So How can you know that someone was looking for, I don't know, for a computer on Google, and then you can find that same person on Instagram and put some ads for that person? And you always have to remember that e-commerce is a lot about, like, you not necessarily need what you're buying. Sometimes people buy because they're bored, because they have free time, because they want to cope with something. So the advertising aspect is really important for e-commerce merchants. And we see like merchants, they invest a little bit on Google and they skyrocket their sales, which is also funny on the other hand, because not funny, sad actually, because the moment that you start to get attention from advertisement, you also get attention for fraudsters.
That's so
So
true.
it's also something that you always have to have in the back of your mind. And if you're seeing a huge spike on sales, it's because my ad strategy. Are all these legit sales, or do I have lots of fraudulent orders here? Because they know that fraudsters, they know that if you're growing fast, probably you have some flaws in your system, because any company when it's growing too fast has its issues. It's hard to keep a company on track of everything. So it's also another aspect that you have to think about.
So much to think about for sure.
Yeah.
I
That
hope we're
then
not
it can
scaring merchants
go,
right now.
yeah. Then you can go back to the add-ons at partners. You don't have to necessarily do everything by yourself. There are lots of companies that are specialists on what they do. So you can outsource payments to a company that is specialized on payments. You can outsource remarketing for a company that does that. And maybe you want to do that from the beginning. So you think about the core strategy of your company. Maybe in the future, you might want to move some of these departments to in-house teams. But what we're seeing that it's working more and more nowadays, it's having companies that are specialized on what they do. So merchants can focus on the core strategy, like what is my next target market? What is the solution? What I'm selling today, it's going to be valuable for the market in 2 years. Do I have advantages if I open a legal entity in another country or things like that? So there's a lot that you have to think on your core business. So it can be overwhelming if you start to think about all these different aspects of marketing, payments, logistics. But the good thing is that they are good companies and that integrate really well with the main platforms that you can use. So that's also another interest aspect. You don't want to choose a platform that it's isolated unless it's a niche platform. So we have cases of platforms that is specific for us for a market, and Denise knows a lot about them. That's one case. But when we talk about general merchandise, you wanna work with one of the big ones that are well integrated in the whole ecosystem, right?
That's absolutely true. And one of the niche platforms that just came to mind is Punchmark. They're a partner of ours that works specifically in the jewelry industry. And that industry right now is struggling so much because they do rely so much on that brick and mortar and that local one-to-one interaction in order to sell a really high-priced item with a lot of emotion tied to it a lot of times, if it's a diamond engagement ring, as an example. And so there are platforms that cater specifically to the jewelry industry, like Punchmark, that provide all kinds of expertise specific to jewelry industry. And so if you've got a very specific product, look at those niche product or those niche platforms too, for sure.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you sell electronics, which is one of the biggest categories on e-commerce, you don't need that, right? Because
correct.
Electronics, general fashion, these are big categories that you don't need a specific platform.
Correct. You might want some specific tools so that you can, work to show it off better, or, making sure that your SEO is better so that you're showing up when you're selling iPhones versus everybody else selling iPhones, because the product is the product is the product. There is no point of differentiation. That's where pricing and being top of mind becomes more important, or fast shipping, those sorts of things.
Yes. And another aspect that I think it's important, we always have to think, what if things go wrong? What are we going to do? So an aspect that you have to think about is what kind of support can you have from your platform if you're gonna have 24 hours support, if you can call them, if you have to open a ticket. And then again, you can go back to the forums and see what the experience from other merchants. Do they usually get the care that they need? Do they have a direct line with the platform? Maybe they're not gonna give you that on the entry level, but maybe as you grow, you're gonna have a direct line with them. And before that, you have to stay with like online FAQs and things like that. So this is also another area that I think it's important for merchants to investigate.
Very true. Very true. And just ask your peers. A lot of times getting that input, finding out people that are selling similar products. There are all kinds of groups on LinkedIn, on Facebook that are specific to the e-commerce platforms and even vertical specific, or women to women entrepreneurs, all these sorts of things where you can really mesh with people that you feel comfortable with, and ask them those tough questions outside of the realm of a salesy environment. So you're getting some true input.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because again, this can be overwhelming. We know that, but they are people in the industry, and the good thing is that there are many stores out there, so you have people to ask too. So it's not a new market. So we were talking earlier that how many stores we're seeing each month, new stores, Denise?
Shopify itself sees 60 to 70,000 a month these last few months, and they've got 1.6 million stores that are live on their platform. And that's one out of, I think G2 says there's 370 e-commerce platforms available out there as of May this year. So
so you're definitely not
it's
alone.
a very big number. I don't know if anybody has their finger on the pulse of that exact number, and it's growing dramatically right now because people have some extra time on their hands potentially if they're not working, and they're thinking about other creative ways to make money. So there are people, that dabble in e-commerce and are able to do it part-time on weekends and in evenings, and then build it into a full-time business. So it is what you make of it. It is the time you put in is what you'll get out of it. And that research up front, I think, is what's so important to go over the things that we talked about. Consider where you want to be in the next 5 years, not just where you are now, and consider the types of products you're selling, the types of functionality you want, how much you want to spend. All of these sorts of things really add up to give you an overview of what you want to choose then for an e-commerce platform.
Yes. And also remember that it's not an easy thing to do. It's not just, you just have a few items and you can start selling. You have to coordinate inventory. You have to think about why people are going to buy from your store and not from another one. So what we see that might be interesting for people that they just want to test the waters is working as drop shippers, which is you don't own the inventory for your store. So it's a different kind of for doing business. It's just for small merchants, but maybe if you are unsure if you want to be in this market, you are unsure about how does it work, am I going to have enough time, this is what I like to do, you might consider starting as a drop shipper. There are solutions for that inside the big platforms such as Shopify or Ecommerce. There are also specific communities for that, like dropshipping lifestyle group. So this is also something that if you're not sure if you want to start on this industry, this is something that you might consider.
That's a great suggestion. They even have classes around how to become a drop shipper on Shopify. Like Dropshipping Lifestyle teaches that and gives you all of the tools out of the box that you need. And so it really holds your hand through that process and allows you to understand how to become an online marketer.
Yeah, it's a good side of not being alone. And the bad side is that you have lots of competition. So
yeah. But generally the drop shippers will sell larger ticket items that are heavy and might not be inventoried other places, like wine cooler cases or hot tubs or steam showers or all these sorts of things that are high ticket items. So you've got a very specific audience that you're working with, a high ticket item. So a little bit more margin in there to pull from. So
people might be amazed if they realize how many bounce houses they're sold every month. For example, we have lots of clients that sell like bounce houses, and so
Yes.
they are specific items. Usually, you have a store with just a few SKUs, but they're very specific and bulky, as Denise was saying. Like
getting creative during these times, right?
yeah.
Well, great. I think we've learned that there are countless ways to evaluate and choose an e-commerce platform. And you just have to make sure that you're investing enough time into your launch to account for that customization, the testing, the tweaking that's needed, that you have a successful launch. And then obviously we would be failing if we didn't remind you that security is about more than safely handling sensitive data. That's something that we didn't get into all the compliancies and stuff, but hiring and outsourcing those partners to make sure that they're doing everything according to the legal and security reasons are so important as well. So if you'd like to know more about how to prevent e-commerce fraud, visit our website. We have a ton of resources dedicated to this very topic, as well as lots of other things that we've covered today. And that's at www.clear.sale. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at podcast@clear.sale. Thanks for listening to the Gateway to E-commerce podcast, where global e-commerce leaders discuss challenges, best practices, new tech, and secrets to success. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Play. And please don't forget to leave us a review. So join us next time for the episode 5, where Raphael is going to share an update on the latest news in e-commerce. See you then.
For more e-commerce insights, visit us on our website at clear.sale.